Good morning, everyone. It's Dan here. I told myself I was going to make a video every week. The video today that I'm making is about gear. Everyone in the saxophone community will always tell you, you progressing as a player is not about your gear. That's not physically going to prevent you from practicing and doing the things that are going to get you to become a better player. However, if you do not have a proper setup, number one, most important, a good reed. What is a good reed? Well, I can tell you this. For a very long time, I did not know what a good reed was. I can tell you though, when you have a good reed, you're not going to need to have a seance. You're not going to need to rub your reed on paper. You're not going to need to, soak it in mouthwash and alcohol or whatever else. You're not going to need to put it in a Ziploc bag and dance around and try it for 5 minutes and rest it and try it for 15 and rest it. You're not going to need to do that. When you get a good reed, it's going to play right out of the box. Now, something else I kind of was super naive about is you buy a box of five reeds, maybe 2 of those reeds are going to play, maybe 3, depending what your brand is. Some signs recently that I've kind of noticed of a bad reed: air escaping underneath and around the reed. So that to me is like the reed is not sitting properly on the table of the mouthpiece. I guess what I'm getting at here, if you can afford it and if every reed does not need to play for you, I think you need to seriously think about tossing those reeds that are just not doing it for you. That's just the reality of the situation. Otherwise, you will need to make an investment into a reed geek, which costs I think about $100, and you will need to familiarize yourself with the process of cutting and curing reeds. And then you will be able to probably make every reed playable. Or if you're lucky enough to live in the States, you can order reeds from Boston Sax Shop, which are supposedly much more consistent. For me, right now, I love D'Addario Jazz Selects. Tip opening reed strength on the tenor. The average is a 7.5 tip opening and a 3.5 reed. That to me will give you a sense of what it is to really be playing the tenor. I would buy a box of 3.5s. I would take one out, it didn't play, and I would say 3.5s are not for me. That was a huge blunder. So you need a bit of resistance in order to encourage you to do that deep belly breath that people are always talking about. Breathing deeply and connecting the breath all the way down here to here is like a different thing. When you first start the sax, you're gonna be kind of way up in the chest here. There's no support. If you don't have a strong enough resistance at the tip, or you're not going to be able to even put that much air through it because it's going to collapse under the pressure. That's the big piece of advice that I'm here to kind of give to newer players when it comes to this whole thing that people tell you it's not about your setup. You do need a proper setup. For me personally, I was on a 2.5/6 opening on tenor because a previous instructor had told me that my 9 3.5 was way too open. Even though I was playing a Van Doren T95, I guess it is. I love that mouthpiece. From a control/emotive perspective, the really big openings don't sound as expressive to me. The other thing I was going to talk about, I've been talking so much about reed. From a gear perspective, the importance of your saxophone being in good working order, having a decent mouthpiece that has a flat table. Those 2 things to me are the most important, and then not having a leaky sax. Saxophones do make a difference. I will not sugarcoat it. There's a reason why everyone plays the Mark 6 and the balanced actions. For me personally, I bought the Silverstein. I'm kind of in a place now where I do have more disposable income, and I decided to just see for myself, does this thing make that much of a difference? I can tell you that coming from the ligature that I had and trying the Silverstein was just so substantial an upgrade. I had a Rovner because I love Bob Reynolds and he played a Rovner. I don't even know if I had the same one as him. Mine might have been stretched out and abused and just not in good shape by the end of it. The Silverstein made a huge difference for me. So it was worthwhile and I had the money. So someone once, when I was, again, full credit here to Bob Reynolds for having this really awesome virtual studio. There's a great community of guys in there and we chatted about different things. And actually I bought my Pete Moriat while I was part of that studio. I had some disposable income at the time and decided types of things change when I get the Pro Horn. And someone said to me, if you just love to pick up your setup, you just love it. It feels great, sounds great. That will make you practice more. If you're picking up your shoelace ligature and your reed that's all cracked and broken and your 4 opening mouthpiece, and it's just a struggle for you to play every time, you're not going to want to play as much. You're going to get better because you're going to be practicing more, not necessarily because the gear is making you better, but you're going to be practicing more because you enjoy picking up your sax. Okay, that's what I'm getting at right there. We do our community a disservice when we tell people that the gear doesn't matter. It does matter. You do need a proper working setup. A sax that isn't leaking and is in decent repair. You need a reed that is going to lay flat properly on your mouthpiece. Oh, right. The other thing I wanted to talk about. Okay, length of time that you can use a reed. My reeds were dying after a couple days, I'm going to be honest. They just lost all response. What Ben Wendell told me, he gets 5 to 6 days out of his reeds. For me, I lose the response in the upper register. If you're trying to practice altissimo as part of your range, and you lose that ability, what starts to happen as your reed gets mushy is you start to default to improper saxophone technique, biting on the mouth, using your embouchure to adjust the distance of the reed to the tip opening instead of using your airstream to do that. So you're going to develop all these bad habits trying to make a reed last. Andrew told me he keeps his reeds to shed. So if you just want to shed some exercises, some scales in the regular register, yeah, go ahead. Put it aside for that purpose. Your really good reeds, identify them, put those aside for your gigs and your recordings. That's my new kind of philosophy for that. Right, the money thing. So obviously money is a huge factor here. I think unfortunately for a lot of us, saxophone isn't a cheap hobby. From the reed perspective, reeds are not cheap. A box of reeds, depending where you are, for me, a box of 5 is about $40. So let's say I get about a week and a half out of each reed. So best case scenario, I'm buying a box of reeds a month. That's $50 a month. So that's not cheap for a lot of us. It does take a little bit of experimentation. You may need to buy a few mouthpieces to find the right tip opening, the right brand for you, the right baffle, the right chamber. Well, that's a whole other discussion. Playing the saxophone itself is like a huge experiment, right? You can't tell that to someone. They have to figure it out for themselves. So all that to say, if money is no object for you, I would say go out and buy the best. For the other players, for the other people at the lower ends of the budget, where I have absolutely been and existed for a substantial amount of my life, with your setup, try and get it repaired in working order. If you're having issues with how long your reeds are lasting, if you're having issues getting up top, if you can't afford to buy a new mouthpiece, $100 in a reed tool. If you're going to get 3 extra reeds out of every box, you're only going to have to buy a box of reeds every 2 months. That seems like a good investment to me. Hopefully something in there will spark something for some of you if you're struggling with the sax. For me, I didn't have that breathy feel like a lot of sax players have. I wasn't getting that shot of air through my sax, and it's because my setup was too small. My tip opening was too small and my reed was too weak. So, and now it's an absolute joy and pleasure to pick up my sax. The saxophone is such a breath-intensive instrument. Your diet and your timing of eating and your belly being full and your ability to draw a deep breath and exhale a deep breath is going to be affected by how much pressure is on your diaphragm from your food. Please like, comment, subscribe. All right, guys, happy shedding, and I'm going to have another video for you by the end of the weekend.